Hello there. Welcome to Stories with Lynn. This is a story I call Christmas Cookies. Christmas is a time for children. It is a time for adults to make memories for children and to receive them from them. It is a time for adults to remember their childhood. Preparations for Christmas at our house started the day after Thanksgiving. That Friday was not a shopping day. It was a day of focused work to start the season. The house would be stripped of all of the Thanksgiving dinner trappings and thoroughly prepared for the job at hand like a man of war sailing into battle. For Mom would make cookies that day. All the needed ingredients and tools were set to their exact right space. Flour next to the sink, sifter handy, sugar next to, eggs and butter warming on the counter, measuring utensils grouped for glancing grasp, oven warming the house with baking aromas. The kitchen table would be covered with a clean but old tablecloth and all the baking equipment placed there, cookie sheets, cooling racks, and of course, the Spritz cookie press. That press usually resided in the far back corner of the kitchen cabinet because it only came out once a year. When the Spritz cookie press came out, well, you knew it was the Christmas season. Spritz cookies were my job. I know now that Spritz cookies are basically a butter cookie, but I still don't know exactly what goes into them. Mom would make up the batter, raising a small white flour cloud as she worked the sifter handles back and forth, then adding the sugar et al. Soon the stiff dough would be plunked down in front of me. Then my 8-year-old expertise came to the forefront. Let me explain a Spritz cookie press to you. The body is a fat aluminum tube with a handle, threaded on both ends. The back end is a screw-driven plunger with a turning handle. The front end is an extrusion mold with stubby legs to keep it just the right distance away from the cookie sheet. The extrusion mold is an interchangeable disc about the size of a maraschino cherry jar lid. And that's where the romance really begins, because there's all sorts of shapes that the Spritz cookies can be made into. Christmas trees and stars, reindeer, clovers and blossoms. One of the tricks of the trade, I'll tell you right now, is not to let things get away from you and make too many of one kind so you run out of batter before you get to all the shapes you want to make. Because Mom won't be making another batch of Spritz cookie batter. She's too busy. It's just a little word to the wise there. I also told you it took my 8-year-old expertise. I bet you just glossed right over that. Well, here's where it comes in. Because you don't just crank the handle and everything turns out perfect. No siree. Got to have some panache, some finesse to make a good Spritz cookie. First of all, the press has to be perpendicular to the cookie sheet. Otherwise, it's going to be lopsided. Now you think those stubby legs make that automatic, but I'm telling you, you're going to get lazy and they're not going to be right. Eating your mistakes might be real fun with chocolate chip cookies, but there's not much to Spritz cookies till they're baked and dressed. Secondly, it takes just the right amount of twist on the turning handle to get just the right amount of batter on the sheet. The shapes on the mold face are real skinny. Many times they aren't even connected. So it's the pressure between the mold face and the cookie sheet that forces the batter together and into the proper shape. Too little pressure and you get a stick figure, or unconnected dabs of batter. Too much pressure and you get a fat figure like your worst enemy with puffed cheeks and a squinched face. It's going to take a while for you to get that right. You don't have to worry. They don't expand much when you bake them. So after you get the whole cookie sheet filled up, then you dress them with sparkles or sprinkles. Sparkles are are glitter you can eat. Sprinkles are like colored pencil leads. That sounds gross, but you can eat them too. They don't taste like much. There was no taste to them at all when I tried them. But Mom says they look pretty, so I put them on. After you bake them, you can dress them with frosting. That's fun. My sister Ann was in charge of the cookie cutter cookies. Full Santas, leaping reindeer, and stuff. She could get more cookies out of a spread of cookie dough than anybody I know. She was also an artist at frosting a cookie using just the right amount of frosting at the right place, the right color too. My favorite way of frosting a cookie became swiping a glob onto the cookie. Not very artistic, but it ate good. Mom would make all sorts of cookies, a real labor of love. Thumbprint cookies rolled in nuts with green mint jelly and red strawberry jelly filling. Ginger cookies with real snap to them. I wouldn't like them till later in life. Snowballs wrapped in powdered sugar that disappeared in your mouth after you bit down on them. All that remained of them was the sweet. Oh, and more. She'd send boxes of cookies to people, and we could have a few along the Christmas season. But at Christmas dinner, she would grace the table centerpiece for dessert with cookies. That was one of the big highlights of the meal. You'd always save a little room, actually quite a bit of room, because you knew that something special was coming for dessert. My. Christmas memories. You know, when I was writing this, I couldn't remember all the shapes that Spritz cookies came in. So I had to dig back into the back of the cabinet where the Spritz cookie press still lives. In the plastic bag, I found a scrap of yellowed, creased paper with Mom's handwritten Spritz cookie recipe. Mom. The merriest of Christmases to you. Hey, I have 2-year-old grandchildren. They're a little young, but a fast learn. Not too young to start Christmas memories. It's a time for children. It's a time for adults to make memories for children and to receive them from them. And for adults to remember their own childhood. The merriest of Christmases to you and yours from Stories with Lynn. Thank you for joining me at Stories with Lynn. If you enjoyed this story, please let me know in the comments. Tell me about your family's Christmas traditions and what memories did this story spark for you. I do so appreciate hearing from my listeners, and I'll respond to each and every one of you. Again, thank you, and the very merriest of Christmases to